Ronnie,
Yes.
I'm really scared. I want you to help me.
Oh,
Ronnie.
all this bullshit! It's turning his house upside down!
Ronnie.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind is one of the most personal films Steven Spielberg ever made. It is also one he spent nearly 20 years trying to fix. A studio that forced his hand, an ending he was paid to shoot and never wanted. A mothership interior he called a mistake the moment it hit screens. And a version of the film, the one Spielberg actually intended, that audiences didn't see until 1998. 1. The ending Spielberg spent 20 years trying to erase. This is the story hiding inside the story. When Close Encounters was released in 1977, Spielberg had been forced to deliver it before he felt it was ready. Columbia Pictures was buried in debt and facing possible bankruptcy. They needed the film for the holiday season. Spielberg complied. 3 years later, Columbia offered him money to produce a special edition on one condition. They wanted to see the inside of the mothership. It would give their marketing department something new to sell. Spielberg agreed, shot the interior, and immediately regretted it. In 1998, nearly 20 years after the special edition, he recut the film one final time for the collector's edition, stripping the mothership interior back out entirely. His words on the subject were plain. The inside of the mothership should have remained a mystery. He called the studio's demand a mistake he should never have agreed to. The definitive version of the film is the one that put the ending back the way he had always imagined it. 2. Columbia bought a house to destroy it. The production needed a house it could do whatever it wanted with. Roy Neary's suburban home, where he builds a mud sculpture of Devil's Tower in his living room, tearing up the garden, piling dirt through the windows, destroying the interior in the process, needed to be a real house the production could actually wreck. The production bought it outright for $35,000. It was located at 1613 Carlisle Drive East in Mobile, Alabama. The crew demolished the interior and garden across several days of filming, then sold the property after production wrapped for $50,000. The $15,000 surplus went directly back into the film's budget. A studio purchased a family home, filmed a man destroying it, and turned a profit on the transaction. 3. 5 names turned down the lead before Dreyfuss got it. The role of Roy Neary, the ordinary suburban man whose life is derailed by a UFO encounter, went through 5 actors before Richard Dreyfuss was cast. Steve McQueen declined because he said he couldn't cry on cue and considered it essential to the character. Jack Nicholson passed because he believed the visual effects would upstage him. Gene Hackman was in the middle of a difficult divorce and couldn't commit. Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino also turned it down. Dreyfuss had actually been angling for the part since he overheard Spielberg describing the film's ideas on the set of Jaws. The moment casting opened, he began lobbying. By the time the 5th actor said no, Spielberg gave him the role. Dreyfuss later said it was the performance he was most proud of. 4. The 5-note theme. Took 300 attempts to find the 5 notes that humans use to communicate with the alien mothership. Arguably the most famous musical motif in science fiction cinema, did not arrive easily. John Williams originally wanted a 7-note sequence. Spielberg told him it was too long. A mathematician was brought in to calculate how many possible 5-note combinations could be drawn from a 12-note scale. The answer was somewhere north of 134,000. Williams composed over 300 distinct versions of the 5-tone phrase before he and Spielberg agreed on the one used in the film. Williams won 2 Grammy Awards for the Close Encounters score in 1979, including Best Original Film Score, but lost the Academy Award that year to his own score for Star Wars. He had been nominated for both simultaneously. 5. The hangar was 6 times bigger than any soundstage. The climactic mothership landing sequence needed the largest indoor space Spielberg could find in the world. No Hollywood soundstage was close to big enough. The production searched for massive enclosed spaces across the country and kept running into the same problem. Every candidate had central support columns that divided the floor plan and destroyed the open runway effect Spielberg needed. The solution was a pair of abandoned World War II dirigible hangars at the former Brookley Air Force Base in Mobile, Alabama. Each hangar measured 300 feet by 300 feet. Together, they were 6 times larger than the biggest soundstage in the world at that time. Spielberg called the Close Encounters production twice as difficult and twice as expensive as Jaws. The hangar was the single biggest reason why. 6. The producer was fired for cocaine. Close Encounters was produced by Julia Phillips and her partner Michael Phillips. Julia Phillips had already won an Academy Award for The Sting in 1974, the first woman ever to win a Best Picture Oscar as a producer. She did not finish Close Encounters. During post-production, Phillips was fired by Columbia studio head David Begelman over her cocaine addiction, which had become severe enough to affect her work. She was kept away from the final stages of the film's completion. In 1991, she published a memoir, You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again, that detailed her addiction and her time on the production in explicit terms. Her account of working with Spielberg, cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond, and François Truffaut was, by most descriptions, highly unflattering to all of them. It became a bestseller. 7. A real film director was cast as the lead scientist. The role of Claude Lacombe, the French scientist leading the government's contact operation, was one of the most significant casting decisions in the film. Spielberg wanted a filmmaker rather than an actor. He approached François Truffaut, director of The 400 Blows, Jules and Jim, and one of the founding voices of the French New Wave. Truffaut's response when offered the part was direct. He said he was not an actor and could only play himself. Spielberg told him that was exactly what was required. Before Truffaut, the production had considered Gérard Depardieu, Jean-Louis Trintignant, and Lino Ventura. Truffaut took the role and delivered one of the film's most quietly commanding performances. Understated, specific, and entirely believable, as a man who had devoted his life to a single extraordinary question. 8. A 3-year-old worked as a professional. The role of Barry Giller, the small child who fearlessly walks toward the alien lights while every adult around him panics, required a 3-year-old performer who could hit marks and react on cue. Cary Guffey had never acted before. Spielberg used unconventional methods to get what he needed. For the scene where Barry opens the front door and smiles at the approaching aliens, Spielberg slowly unwrapped a present just off camera. The delight on Guffey's face is real. He was reacting to an actual gift being revealed. When Guffey exclaims "toys" in the take, it was unscripted. The child genuinely believed he was looking at toys. Guffey hit so many of his setups in single takes that the cast and crew gave him the nickname One Take Cary. He was 3 years old, 9. The man who installed the synthesizer ended up in the film. The iconic synthesizer that plays the 5-note sequence during first contact with the mothership was an ARP-2500. A real instrument that required a specialist to install and operate on set. Philip Dodds, vice president of engineering at ARP Instruments, was sent to the Alabama location to set up the unit. Spielberg looked at him, decided he looked exactly right for the scene, and cast him on the spot. Dodds appears in the finished film as Jean-Claude, the musician who plays the 5-note sequence on the enormous synthesizer rig during the contact sequence. He was not an actor. He was there to install the equipment. He ended up in one of the most watched scenes in the film. 10. The technical advisor appears in the final scene. The title of the film, and the classification system that gives it meaning, came from a real person. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was a civilian scientific advisor to Project Blue Book, the United States Air Force's official investigation into UFO sightings during the 1950s and 60s. He developed the Close Encounter classification system, First Kind, Second Kind, Third Kind, that Spielberg used as his title. Hynek served as a technical consultant throughout production. He also appears in the film. In the final sequence at Devil's Tower, as the crowd of scientists and officials presses forward to see the aliens, a bearded man in a powder blue suit smoking a pipe pushes through the crowd for a better look. That is Hynek. The man who spent years officially investigating whether aliens existed appears in a movie about aliens making contact, watching it happen in person in the final scene, in uncredited silence. 11. George Lucas bet against his own film. In 1977, both Spielberg and his friend George Lucas had new films opening within months of each other. Lucas's was Star Wars. Spielberg's was Close Encounters. Lucas was convinced his own film would fail. He believed Star Wars was too strange, too risky, and too expensive to find an audience. He thought Spielberg's film, warm, grounded, built around a director already proven by Jaws, would dominate the year. So he offered Spielberg a trade. Lucas would take 2.5% of Close Encounters' profits. Spielberg would take the same percentage of Star Wars profits in return. Spielberg accepted. Star Wars made $775 million. Spielberg has described the arrangement as one of the best business decisions he ever made, and one that he did nothing to earn except agree to a bet his friend made against himself. 12. Spielberg filmed the opening scene. In 1975, to get the money, Close Encounters had a financing problem before it had a production. Columbia Pictures needed the project to qualify for a tax shelter arrangement that required filming to begin before December 31st, 1975. Principal photography wasn't scheduled to start until 1976. The cast hadn't been fully assembled. The sets hadn't been built. Spielberg chose to film the air traffic control sequence first. It required no principal actors and no constructed sets, just a location, a small crew, and real air traffic controllers reading dialogue. He cast actual working controllers because he wanted the jargon and rhythm of the scene to sound authentic. The sequence was shot in Palmdale, California, in late 1975, months before the real production began, purely to satisfy a financing deadline. 13. The cinematographer won the Oscar. While Spielberg was criticizing him, Vilmos Zsigmond was the director of photography on Close Encounters and won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography for his work on the film. His relationship with Spielberg during production was not smooth. Zsigmond later acknowledged that he extended the production schedule by watching films every night during shooting, which gave Spielberg new ideas he would then incorporate the following day. New scenes were added. The schedule stretched, costs climbed. Producer Julia Phillips, before her dismissal, was openly hostile toward Zsigmond and blamed him for compounding the budget overrun. Zsigmond had previously turned down the opportunity to shoot Jaws. He stayed for Close Encounters and won the most prestigious award in his field for it. The friction and the Oscar arrived in the same production. 14. R2-D2 is on the bottom of the mothership. When Star Wars and Close Encounters were both in production in 1977, Spielberg and Lucas were in regular contact. The friendship left a mark. Look carefully at the underside of the mothership as it passes over Devil's Tower in the climactic sequence. Attached to the hull is a model of R2-D2, the small droid from Star Wars, mounted upside down among the mothership's detailed surface elements. It was a private joke between two friends whose films were competing in cinemas at the same moment. The detail is small enough that most audiences miss it entirely on first viewing. It has no meaning in the story. It is simply Spielberg quietly acknowledging the other big science fiction film of 1977. The one his friend made. The one he had already bet would make him a fortune. 15. Spielberg regrets the ending. He wrote, in 2005, Spielberg gave an interview in which he said something that reframed the entire film. He stated that he made Close Encounters at a time when he had no children. If he were making it today, he said, he would never have written Roy Neary boarding the mothership and leaving his family behind. The ending, a man abandoning his wife and 3 children to travel with aliens, was designed to feel transcendent and hopeful. By 2005, Spielberg viewed it differently. He called Roy's choice irresponsible. He said a father who walked away from his children was not someone he could celebrate anymore. The film didn't change. His feelings about what it meant did. The most acclaimed ending of his early career had become, in his own assessment, the moral choice he could no longer defend. 16. It changed what science fiction was allowed to feel. Before Close Encounters, the aliens in American cinema were almost always threats. The War of the Worlds, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, them. The default assumption in science fiction was that contact meant catastrophe. Spielberg changed that in a single film. Close Encounters depicted alien contact as something awe-inspiring, peaceful, even spiritual. It arrived in 1977 alongside the cynicism and disillusionment that followed Vietnam and Watergate. And audiences responded to it as something they had been waiting for without knowing it. The film grossed over $300 million worldwide on a budget of approximately $19 million. It was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2007 as a film of lasting cultural significance. E.T., which Spielberg made 5 years later, grew directly from a question he asked himself on the Close Encounters set. What if the small alien called Puck had never made it back onto the mothership? The most beloved alien in cinema history began as an afterthought on a set in Alabama. A studio that forced his hand, an ending he filmed and then spent 20 years undoing. A 3-year-old who needed 1 take. And 5 notes that took 300 attempts to find. Close Encounters wasn't just a film about making contact with something unknown. It was a film Spielberg was still in contact with, still revising, still reconsidering, for most of his career. Drop the fact that landed hardest in the comments below. And subscribe. The next story is already waiting, ready.